Welcome back from the coffee break, everyone. My name is Erik Garnett. I'm one of the organizers and PIs here at AMOLF, and Esther, Alarcón, Lladó is also going to be helping out with the discussion section, manning the person on the computer, helping to figure out which questions we discuss according to your suggestions. So I thought the topic is the road towards terawatt scale PV in Europe, and in particular, we're interested to kick off the discussion session and asking each of the panelists, what do you think is the most important thing that we as researchers can do in the next year in order to make sure that PV comes back to Europe? It's a big question to start off. So we can start with Anna and move towards that. Yeah.
I think at least the researchers that are established, I think the biggest thing we can do is to federate between all of us and to contact governments to make sure they understand what is at stake. And we don't have much time.
Yeah, okay, so you think lobbying, if I summarize.
Lobbying, but also not working against each other, so
yeah.
We working all together.
Yeah.
I think we're all here in the same boat.
Yeah, okay, so speaking with one voice is something we talked about in the group leader business meeting. Thanks, Patricia.
I can also agree. I also think it's a very important bit. Going more into the science or what we can focus as researchers, I would also stress that the importance of efficiency, which I tried to bring also up, is a very important leverage to also push the technology, and also actually getting better stability to actually make this technology last longer will directly also help. And to really get it back to Europe, I think also the joint forces will be very important, and actually to convince politicians and also the economy that actually this is the right thing to do and that we need to do it now.
Great, thanks.
Yes, you added, I think, one within the next year or so, which means that the people needed are not in this room, because that is very short term, and that it means that we have to implement existing technologies, advanced existing technologies into manufacturing in Europe. And that is not the field of research so much, and especially.
No, but what I meant is, what can we as researchers do in the next year to make sure that PV comes to back to Europe? Not that PV comes to Europe in the next year.
Okay, that's what
not realistic.
Yeah. No, yeah. Then I think we have to provide solutions for the short term, because that decides whether we will have industry at all or not, and prepare for the next generation. So we discussed a little about tandem, for instance. That is typically a next generation technology, and that has to be ready when the industry is ready for it. And I think we are in a hurry and focus on that. And for the longer term, we may explore other options.
Yeah. Now, the next question that had your votes was, can Europe be competitive with silicon PV? So we talked a lot about perovskites, tandems, right? Zinc phosphide, new materials, and the story is always that Europe is good with these high-tech, next-gen, all kinds of things, but silicon is already well established, and so the question is, do you think silicon can actually regain a foothold here in Europe, or is that ship sailed? Maybe we start with Wim on this one as the resident silicon expert.
I think yes, but then we have to take all the aspects into account, internalize environmental aspects, for instance. Today's prices are not a reflection of the true cost, so that has to be taken into account. And then, as mentioned this morning, since modern large-scale manufacturing does not rely a lot on low labor cost, I think we can, especially since equipment manufacturers and technology developers are very strong here. But that is why in Europe there's working on what is usually called a level playing field, meaning that we have to take all cost aspects into account rather than just the simplistic price tag, which includes only direct cost but not everything related to large-scale deployment of manufacturing.
Yeah, Anna, you wanted to also add something?
Yeah, I think about the cost. If food is highly subsidized in Europe, why can't be the energy, like renewable energy, be subsidized too? I think this would be, and I think food is subsidized because it's a matter of strategic, it has a strategic component. I think we see energy too, so I think not only the cost, but subsidizing the energy that is produced here with components that are produced here will probably help.
Yeah, nice idea, Patricia.
Yeah, and I also think that it is happening. So also in the European Union, for the Green New Deal to reach it, I think it's also clear that there will be a lot of investment or money needed actually to buy these PV panels and so on. And I think also for Europe, it will be important, like actually who will get that money. Like if you produce or if you need such a lot of PV panels, then I mean this will be also a lot of money actually which will be spent. So it's also in the interests of Europe to actually have also the whole panels again produced in Europe. And also within, I think there's this Repowering EU activities going on, and they are very much focusing on. So I think this will happen, but it needs to be accelerated and pushed because, of course, there's also other driving forces. I think that's fine.
Yeah, there is a big push, of course, to get the whole value chain here. I think not just the high-end finishing modules, but also even the raw material processing and things like this. Yeah. Next question: waste. If solar energy becomes our primary electricity source, how can we recycle solar panels and recover precious elements? Or maybe even not precious elements. How can we recycle even silicon or lead or earth-abundant elements? Could be an interesting one. Maybe we start with the earth-abundant PV speaker on this one.
I don't know if this is an issue right now. I think solar panels are supposed to last for very long. So I don't know if there is an expert here that knows if this is an issue for the solar panels. When are we starting recycling solar panels? I don't know if Patricia knows, but I think they're supposed to last at least 25 years or longer. So.
But if you have 10 terawatts of, even if it's 25 years, then at some point you have a mountain of waste, right?
Yeah, we also need to do it. I mean, at the moment, also with, for example, silver or other, like talking about the panels we now have on the rooftop, and also the glass actually. So we need to do this. There's no other way around if we want to go to terawatt. There, it only works with actually, pushing towards a design which from the beginning thinks about recycling, which kind of takes into account from the beginning. So this is also one big important thing for us to do. Also if we talk now about perovskite silicon, or if we're working on actually what we can still do with the silicon technology, there's still so much to do, and especially for this silicon solar cells, which some people say, but actually it's done, actually it's not done. I mean, we need to work on the sustainability aspect of it, and to think about really the scale of terawatts, which kind of consequences has this on the technology and on our research.
Yeah, indeed. Well, first of all, I think we have to come up with a better solution for the existing technologies or existing type of modules, because they end up as road fillers, basically, after taking off the aluminum frame and the junction box. They call it recycling, but it's actually downcycling of the worst type. So everything that is of value inside the module ends up under a road or in another type of low value application. And that can be done much better, and many institutes, including TNO, work on that, especially to recover, basically recover everything. So the glass in a high quality silicon for high value applications like lithium batteries or solar cells, and obviously also the silver, because that is a valuable material. And then you have to design for sustainability, and we have a complete design including the materials ready. So, and I think other institutes have a similar solution available, but now it has to be adopted in very large scale manufacturing, and that is a huge hurdle, because it is, even if you change one parameter or material, it is already big, let alone if you come with a completely new design with new materials that is basically starting from scratch.
Yeah, okay.
I just want to know, because you're the expert there, so are we throwing away the solar cells because they are not functional anymore, or because they are so cheap that people just exchange them and they don't care about. Like with everything, right? We don't repair things; we just throw things away.
But we cannot get them out currently with the low-cost recycling methods. So that's.
But are people throwing them away? Why? Because they don't work, or because they want a better one, or?
No, I think most of the time it's because they don't work anymore. Because if it's repowering, as they call this, so after 15 years getting a more efficient module, then they may have a second life, and there's several initiatives to give them a second life. But that postpones the problem to 30 years, for instance, and then we have to do it anyway.
Okay, the next question is, will silicon be enough, or do we need other thin film materials? I guess this has always been a long-standing question in solar cells, that there's always this idea that there's this next thin film material, it's promised it's going to displace silicon, and over this has been shown not to be the case. Maybe we're at a different point, but of course people have said this for a long time, that this new technology is the one that's going to be different. I think the question still remains. It's changing, but maybe it still remains. Will we just end up with a world full of silicon, or will there be something else? Maybe we start with Patricia on this one.
Yeah, tough question. So of course I can say, yeah, the roadmaps for PV, they show that tandem will come, and this will be the next thing. I also think so, but of course there are a lot of things we still need to solve and to show. I mean, silicon is working very reliably, so actually I want to see silicon on rooftops and out there. So this is, even though I work on tandem, this is completely the thing we need to do now. But of course we need to develop it further. I mean, this is our job, and I think there's a clear potential to do so. There was also, I think recently, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, by my colleague, or former colleague, Jan-Christoph Goldschmidt, one paper in Nature showing actually that we do need still the innovation to actually keep up with the demand we need, and that silicon alone cannot do it actually. So this is just scenarios he was putting out there in his paper.
Yeah, Anna, do you want to add something?
I agree. I think for driving the innovation with different materials, and also you cannot depend on one single material for deploying the solar. You can have a lot of issues, and especially having it one single material from one single country. I think this is very high risk for us. So we need other paths.
Silicon technology has surprised friend and enemy time and again. So I tend to say, yes, silicon can do the job, but we can do much better with silicon alone. And the mistake that was made in I may say so, in thin films was to try to fight silicon on low cost as the main parameter in the market, which is a tremendously difficult market. Where you lose as a new technology without a track record, without a volume, without an efficiency even. So I think now the aim is either to start in new applications which cannot be served by silicon as easily, or literally team up with silicon, like you explained so beautifully. So
yeah,
then if you cannot beat them, be smart.
Yeah, join them. Yeah. Yeah, and then maybe as related to this one, before going away from this topic, so let's assume that there will be some teaming up, and you have tandem, which seems to be, if you look at all the roadmaps, I agree this is where it looks like it's going. So then what is the biggest challenge for those materials? Because we already see the efficiency is getting there. I think most people think the efficiency will be high enough, above 30% is already almost reached. Is it stability, or is it the recyclability, or public acceptance, or where do you see the big challenge in something silicon tandem line? We'll start with you again.
So for silicon perovskite based tandems, I think it's still the stability issue and the scalability. I mean, this still needs to be shown that we really have modules, we have them out, and just on a different scale than we have it now. But I think also bankability is what will be also an issue. especially when there are so many still, let's say, the clear path is not out there yet. You know, even if you talk to some manufacturers, I mean, they ask you, okay, and how should the tool look like now? And still I'm like, okay, we could do it this way, we could do it that way. So I mean, it's great that the Profs guides, they offer such a large variety, but we also at a point like need to like also take the risk maybe and just say, okay, now we're gonna focus on this way. It's most suitable or has most potential for the upscaling, and this is now what we're really gonna push. And so far, ProfSCAT has been very, let's say, broad. There's a lot of publications out, but this clear path is not there yet, and this is what we really need to focus on.
Yeah, you maybe see that in the history of silicon as well, that there are many different possible technologies that were being developed, and then in the end, there was aluminum back surface field dominated, and then at a certain point, then there was a switch, right? And you see these generations of new technologies coming out and taking over. Yeah, maybe it's time for perovskite or other thin film to think also this way. Yeah, great. The next question is more about lifetime and stability, like we were just discussing. Lifetime of modules, will increasing lifetime be more important or easier and cheaper? I think that's supposed to be if easier and cheaper refurbishment and integration of modules for reaching the terawatt. So, I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. Easier than, cheaper refurbishment and integration of modules. Yeah, okay, so this is the question of, do you make a 50-year stable silicon cell, or do you make one that's easier to recycle, renew, whatever, in 25 years, or even 5 years? You could think of a scenario where you install a solar panel and you say we come back in 10 years and we exchange it for a new one, and then we kind of upgrade your panel. That's a totally different model, which doesn't exist at all today, I think, but it's maybe not totally impossible that you could have that. It's an interesting question.
Yeah, not totally impossible, but highly unlikely. I've seen, let's say, proposals to have a business model but usually for a technology that cannot live for. So as a solution to a lack of lifetime or reliability, I think in the United States the official aim is now to develop modules and system components that have a 50-year lifetime, because it's not that refurbishment is for free, not financially, not environmentally, not in terms of availability of, let's say, technology that would fit the system. So if it can be done with a longer lifetime, I think that is the preferred option, especially from a sustainability point of view. But if it cannot be done, perhaps not in 10 years or 15 years, but after 25 years, for instance, rather than a very short time.
Yeah. Any differing opinions?
I also fully agree, but there might be also some niche markets for like throwaway PV for sure. Also, especially people like now with perovskite or like perovskite multi-junction, for example. So all thin film, cheap perovskites, this might happen. But still, I also would agree that the first thing to do is that we actually make them last longer. This would, of course, pay off much better. I mean, the recycling we anyway need, because after 50 years still there's this issue, but... It reminds me of glass bottles, right? You can return beer bottles and then they reuse them, or you can throw them and get them recycled, and that takes a tremendous amount of energy and obviously costs more money than just cleaning the bottle, but somehow we still currently have both, which are popular solutions. I'm not sure why. Maybe there's a recycling expert.
That's also a lack of standardization.
Let's see, what's the next question? What could light management do? No, it's okay. We can go to this one. Do researchers have a responsibility to be involved in the process of transition from proof of concept to industry scalability and implementation? Yeah, so I guess this is a really interesting question. How far should you go as a researcher before you hand it off to someone else? I think that's more or less the question. Yeah, go ahead, Han.
I think we all do an excellent job when we have fun. So I think if that's what we have fun with, we should do it. But if that's not what we have fun with, I think we have fun with different things, so I think there's enough people that enjoy this tremendously, so we just need to transmit the motivation and the vision to these people, because they will do it much better at least than me.
Yeah. Patricia?
Yeah, I think also it's very important, at least in case if we don't want to be on the stage or working on the policy making, still I think it's great to provide good information as a basis. I mean, also these people, who are then doing the job, they need good facts and also maybe good visualizations and a sneaky story to actually tell and actually to convince than the people making decisions. So I think this is what we can do. For example, at Fraunhofer ISE we do this photovoltaic reports every year where we just collect how the market is changing, about efficiency and so on. So actually have a gathered, very handy collection, for example, how the PV is evolving.
I think there's not such a thing as the researcher. So we have researchers for every stage of the development, I would say, and it's probably not a good idea if people start to have the pretension or ambition is okay perhaps, but to cover the entire chain, because industry development and applied research is different from basic research. But I'm convinced that there are many research questions also in the transition towards industry, even though they are of different nature and they have a usually high time pressure, for instance, but there's still a lot of science and research.
Yeah, as we heard that there's people at TNO also consider themselves to be scientists.
Exactly.
We should not forget about that. Scientists and researchers, yeah, indeed. Yes, this next question is, what could light management and new photovoltaic materials contribute to photoconversion for making hydrogen and other renewable fuels? So I guess this could be either directly through PV and electrolysis, let's say, or solar fuels or some other direction. Yeah, Anna, you've done a lot of work on both PV and solar fuels, I think, right?
No, I have not done any work on solar fuels.
No, okay.
No. I wish I had. I think it's a future of has a lot of future, but I'm not chemist enough to do it. But probably there's a lot to do in this field. Probably light management has a lot to offer here, but I'm not good enough. I mean, I don't know enough of it. But very naive answer, I think, for sure.
Yeah, I guess. For example, with this tandem approach, also it's very promising. I mean, then we have high voltage, and we can drive certain reactions, and also, I mean, for hydrogen, for making hydrogen, this can be very important. So, I mean, there also, of course, light management schemes are needed. I mean, in general, but I mean, also I would like to also stress that the tandem application is also very much important. For hydrogen production, and I think also there's some work going on with 3.5 tandems, with perovskite silicon tandems already.
Yeah, maybe in tandems the light management problems are different a bit than in single junction as well, right? You have to think about where different colors go and not just where the light goes in general.
Well, if you make better solar cells with light management, that helps hydrogen production a lot, because the route from solar energy or photovoltaics to electrolysis to hydrogen is the main route today, and a proven route, and it will probably be very big, as we heard this morning. But then, of course, if light management gives you more efficient materials use or higher efficient devices, in photovoltaics we care about materials, but in photoconversion and direct hydrogen production, I think we care even more about the materials that we use and the availability. So if light management can do anything to ease that problem, I think it is very worthwhile.
Yeah, if we can reduce by a factor 2 or even more, maybe the amount of material you need, that can have a huge impact when we go to large scale. Indeed. Yeah. Moving on. Should the focus on PV research be on low cost when cheap solar cells are already available? Since low cost can promote less sustainability, should research emphasize long-term circularity solutions? Yeah, this is an interesting question. This idea of, as it reminds me a bit of this fast fashion trend, right? That you have these cheap clothes and they turn over very fast. It's really not very sustainable. But then yeah, it's also a little bit difficult to drive the market if everything is expensive. So how do we do this trade-off of cost versus sustainability? Or are there ways to have both low cost and high sustainability? Patricia, can we start with you?
Again, increasing the efficiency. I don't know. I mean, yeah, we should not. We should be very clear with ethical standard. I mean, I think it was also mentioned or a question this morning, and how actually, the working conditions are, and then and how the PV panels are produced. So we need to keep this standard and actually improve it. But still, I mean, with the cost, it has also to do with scaling up, as we also see with the learning curve. So still, we expect that the cost will go down, not because people are badly paid or giving less money, but just by the scaling up of the capacity. And yeah, just as I said, with efficiency, we will also reduce the cost per watt peak. So this is what we can do without kind of having some trade-offs with the labor part, for example, or the payment.
It would be a nice problem to have that we're in fast fashion for solar cells. I think if we arrive at this point, then you can always legislate and make it, that people cannot throw them away. You can always try to correct this, right?
But I think we will be there. I mean, it's not far away. In 10 years, I think we will be there where it's really. Yeah,
but then
really
I'll be very happy. Then we need to make sure that there is some legislation to protect the environment.
Yeah. We came down a factor of 100 in prices and cost over the past decades, and now we have to go down by typically a factor of 3 more to make also the hydrogen that we produce with photovoltaics, let's say, competitive or low cost enough. And I think the sustainability for the technology that is 3 times cheaper, or the electricity that is 3 times cheaper, should have sustainability as a boundary condition. So it is becoming less easy to go down, but then we came a factor of 100 and we only have a factor of 3 to go, where the efficiency knob is perhaps one of the most important to turn. And then at the same time we have to develop or improve and maintain sustainability.
Yeah, I agree entirely. And maybe what we've already talked about in the lifetime of the solar cells, if you make something 50 years stable, then it directly helps with the sustainability as well. Yeah. Did you have something?
Yeah, I also just agree that we need also legislation for this. I mean, it will be very, very important that it's not going this direction as fast fashion and so on, and we do face this very bad situation. So there we should also stress it maybe much more, maybe if we're more involved into talking to politicians, for example, and so on. That sustainability is key and the way to go, and we need this legislation there.
Yeah, maybe we can take a hint from the lighting industry, where LEDs, have been typically much more expensive to buy, but they last so much longer that in the end it becomes cheaper, and so, yeah, they're also much more sustainable in that way. So maybe this can be the case in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and for the perovskites, I really want, or it's even more important, I would say, because if we're seeing then, for example, water-soluble lead-based thing, we don't want to see them somewhere just dumped. We really want to see the whole concept for recycling, which we need to think about from the beginning. So I think we should also maybe learn and be a bit prepared. I mean, we already talked about the design for recycling, and especially for perovskites, I think this will hold true, because it seems that still the lead containing material is still the one we're at the moment getting best results and working with. So this will be very important.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. There's still lots of questions about lead, how important this will be, if you can encapsulate it properly, if you can recycle it properly. Yeah, there's big open questions there, I think, and how it will be regulated in the future. Is the EU manufacturing at the terawatt scale realistic? This is a really interesting one. Vim and I already had some discussion about this, whether it's even necessary to have terawatt scale manufacturing within Europe, because it's maybe more than we would even need to do if we consider all the PV worldwide and all the other countries that will be manufacturing. But it could be a good target, let's say. And what would that encompass? What would we have to do to make that realistic? we can start with Vim. We had some discussions about this.
Yeah, I think it's a moral obligation to believe this is true. But apart from that, I am also convinced that it can be done if the sense of urgency and the motivation and the inspiration and the benefits are big enough. Among all the very negative things that are happening, this I see as the positive aspect that even people who did not think about it are now convinced that it is very important and urgent to bring back not just PV manufacturing, but that Europe has to be able to manufacture anything at all at substantial scales, because we live on China for almost everything we do, at least in terms of technology. And I think nothing wrong with importing part of what we need, but if we are not able to manufacture high-tech, high-quality products, then I think it's even much worse than being dependent on the import of fossil fuels.
Yeah, I agree. Other things to add?
I mean, we've seen that Europe decided to create a fab for silicon chips, so which we never thought it would be possible 5 years ago. So this is possible. I mean, PV is even easier. It's much easier than silicon chips.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we had a group trip recently to Zurich, and we were hearing about how they have these enormous silicon fabs in Zurich. It's a super expensive city, and they're still able to make it work. So I guess if that can happen, then you should be able to also do PV in Europe.
Yeah, and I think also this is, as we heard, now the urgency is so strong that I think also politicians have realized this. I mean, there was already production in Germany, which is now not existing anymore, unfortunately. And actually now we need to spend a lot of money again to build that up. But this will happen. I think it's the only way to also, as we just heard, to not be so dependent for such a technology we'll have. We will need in such a scale to reach. To reduce our CO2 emissions. So that's the only way, and again, it will be a lot of money which we anyway will need to pay, and the big question is also then to the policy or politicians, like, do we want to give this billions of euro to Asia to have this kind of energy deficit in this amount, or are we just gonna invest it here and have also with this some more energy security and so on, all the benefits. So I think it will happen, and we need to be also convinced ourselves, because we have good arguments actually to believe that and to push that.
This is nice. I get the feeling that I'm like in the locker room and you're giving me a pep talk to go and win the ball game or something. After this, we have to get our resolve. But yeah, I think that's maybe a good spot to end, actually. Or any final thoughts?
There were some urgent things in
Yeah.
the room.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can jump. I mean, anyone can write questions on here, but if you have something that we can open it up for the last, should we say 5 minutes? We can do more still?
Or it disappeared.
No?
No,
Okay.
it comes back.
Yeah, we'll do a couple questions.
So we were talking about large-scale manufacturing, that's for PV. But I think the energy transition, the most challenging part is actually storage. Maybe we should also somehow focus on that, invest money on that as well. I mean, it's not the same discussion.
Yeah, but sure. So it's also so the integration of PV into the energy system, and this goes along with, of course, the storing with the batteries. But also, I think, especially, or at least in Germany, it's also a big thing, or in Europe in general, also to have, for example, agri-photovoltaics, so actually kind of combine different fields to actually put more or less PV everywhere. Sometimes, our head of institutes usually says, okay, we are now at a point where we need to put it everywhere, and of course this sometimes brings some obstacles. For example, with legislation, if you put two fields together, you have double amount of trouble maybe, but this is what we need to work on, and to actually get the whole potential in the field, but think it also a bit broader, of course. Sure.
Maybe just to add on that, one of the biggest costs for electrolysis is the energy. So if you have PV electricity at less than a cent per kilowatt hour, then all of a sudden this becomes possible. So I think this is the factor 3 Vim was talking about. Susan, you had a question.
Yes, or more of a comment maybe. So we were talking about solar panels or LMPV becoming fast fashion just now. And fast fashion actually also has an advantage, because if you're able to reply fast to what the market wants, you can actually, I think, increase this learning curve that we were talking about this morning. So maybe should we be thinking also about what do we do with second-hand panels? Should we, in a way, set up a market where people can buy second-hand, or can buy very new state-of-the-art and increase the learning curve there, while we're still using the solar panels they don't want to?
It's a great question. Any ideas? Can we use fast fashion for the short term to get to sustainability in the long term? Is that a good rephrasing of the question? Yeah.
Well, but people are setting up markets for second-hand panels, so to say. It's all very small scale still, because there's not so many second-hand panels available, and you need to come up with a solution for quality testing that is low cost in between the two applications. But it's coming. There's something called the Weeshuis orphanage in the Netherlands, but there are other initiatives as well. Some of them focus on export of the modules, but I think there's no reason not to use them in the Netherlands as well.
Yeah.
Probably what makes sense is that these cells go to places where there's a lot of sun and where the efficiency is less important as in the Netherlands. I think in the Netherlands you want the highest efficiency because there's not enough sun, while other places are less. And I think often is poorer countries too, so these goes hand in hand for the moment, and so this may be the market.